Hi, my name is Dan Meharg, and I want to talk to you a bit about insects. We have a problem in our world that you could help us with. We have fewer and fewer insects, and scientists tell us that if we just simply provide more habitat or more homes for insects, then we could reverse this problem. And why do we need insects? You might say, oh, I hate insects because they bite me, But insects are so important. Every third bite of food that we eat needs a bee or a butterfly or another pollinator to land on the flower to turn that flower into have that flower make a fruit for us. So that's one reason why it's super important. And also, if we're going to have birds, we're going to have fish, we're going to have a lot of different kinds of animals, they all rely on insects. So that's why you can help us. We need to create some more habitat. So what do we do here? So this area in the front of our house used to have a lot of bushes, and they were badly damaged in a winter storm. And instead of just simply getting more bushes, I decided to take the bushes out. You can see one of the stumps over here, one of them. Take the bushes out and instead plant wildflowers that bees and butterflies and other insects could really appreciate. And now what we're going to do is we're going to take the seeds from those wildflowers and make more wildflowers. So I'm going to make some new habitat in the back of the house. But first I wanted to show you a little bit about the wildflower itself. When a flower wilts, sometimes we say, oh, the flower is dead. But what the plant is really doing is that after a bee has landed on the flower and pollinated it, then the flower, it sort of looks like it's dead, but what it's really doing is it's making a seed inside it. So do you see how it sort of goes from this state to a fluffy state? Then these little pieces of fluff can then fly off. You see the little seed there. And make new asters somewhere else. You can see on this plant, it's really dramatic on this plant. You see how the bee has landed on this flower, and now the flower is making a seed, and it's also making this fluff. And so when the plant is very, very fluffy, that's when it shows us that it's ready to fly off and make new asters somewhere else. Or for us, it's ready for us to pick. So I've picked a number of seeds, and we're going to do something called cold stratifying outdoors in the back of the house. So I'll show you that next. So my family has been living here on this property in these houses that you see behind us here since around 1905 or so. So we've lived here for a long time. And so the gardens that we have been around for a really long time. So these Dutch irises that you see back here, I think they were planted by some of my relatives maybe 60, 70, 80 years ago. They keep coming up. And the same with this lilac bush that you see right here. Also planted by probably my great-grandmother a really long time ago. But what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to help out the bee population and the butterfly population and the insect population by increasing habitat, doing like what those scientists say we should do. Now, in order to do that, I have to cold stratify the wildflower seeds I'm going to plant in here. And I'll tell you what cold stratify means in just a minute, but let me tell you something cool about plants. Plants have to come up with a special strategy so that if their seed lands in the soil here, and then if this soil warms up on a warm day in December, that plant can't have that seed start to grow. Because what if it starts to grow in the middle of January? Well, it's going to get super cold again in February, and then the seed is going to die, or the little seedling is going to die. So plants have a strategy, and they have different strategies for lying in the cold, damp soil and staying as a seed until it's springtime. Some plants have super, super thick seed coats, and I want to show you one of those plants. This is seeds I collected from a plant called Baptisia. It's a beautiful wildflower, and this seed will grow a plant that gets to be like maybe this tall. It gets to be like four feet tall, but it's got a really, really thick seed coat on it. And so it takes a really, really long time in the cold, damp soil for the seed coat or the outside of the seed to wear through so that water can get inside. And when water finally gets inside, then that seed will begin to grow. But what scientists have noticed about this particular plant, Baptisia, is the seed coat is so strong, sometimes it takes a year or two for the seed coat to get soft enough for water to get inside. So I want to speed things up. So I'm going to scarify or weaken the seed coat a little bit so we'll get some sprouting this spring. So I have like a little emery board here that I borrowed from my kids, and I'm gonna scratch the outside of the seed coat and wear it through so that the water can get in this spring. I'm just gonna weaken it a little bit. And I'm gonna do this for a bunch of the seeds, and then I'll show you how we cold stratify them in the soil. Go ahead. So seeds that wind up in the ground in this part of North America need a strategy. They need some way so that they won't start growing on a really, really warm day in January. So they won't start growing until the soil warms up in May. So there is no chance that frost will come and kill the little baby seed, the little seedling. So some of the seeds have these thick seed coats, and the plant won't start sprouting until that seed coat has worn off and water has gotten in. Other seeds have a special chemical inside, and until that chemical wears off, the seed won't begin to grow. And others react with sunlight. So what we're going to do is we're going to do what's called cold stratification. We're going to put the seeds in cold, damp soil, in a layer of cold, damp soil. And I'm just going to run my hand through here and just make some really very shallow rows in the soil here. And then I'm just going to cover them very, very lightly with soil. That way they can get nice and cold and wet. And the seeds, I've scratched away or scarified their outer layer, their seed coat a little bit, so that they will sprout faster in the spring. And then hopefully we're going to have a lot of Baptisia seeds, Baptisia wildflowers that bees and butterflies really like. Interesting thing about the thing that I did with the emery board, I scarified or made a scratch in the seed coat. A lot of times when a seed is eaten by an animal, its intestines scarify the seeds. They scratch up the seeds when it's going through an animal's intestines. So when it comes out of the animal, then it is ready to sprout the following spring. This little crack in the seed coat isn't enough to cause the seed to sprout too early, but it's enough so that we won't have to wait a whole year for the seeds to sprout. Scientists have found seeds in the permafrost in Russia, in Siberia and Russia, that were 31,000 years old. 31,000 years. And they were able to get them to sprout. So seeds can last in the soil for a really, really long time. You can see I just put a very light layer of soil over top of what I just planted. And then I'm going to plant one other seed. It is a, be right back. This seed is a milkweed seed, and it comes with this fluff. And these seeds don't need to be scarified because they're very thin. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the fluff off of them, and I'm going to put them in the ground as well. And just let the fluff float away. And I'm going to put the little seedlings in the ground so they can cold stratify as well. I could leave the fluff on, but sometimes the fluff causes mold to grow on the seeds, and then they don't do as well. Go away, fluff. I've got some more seeds here. Okay, so I've now put some seeds in the damp soil, and I'm hoping that in the spring we'll be able to have a lot more wildflowers, be able to attract more bees and butterflies, and help the world have more insects in it. Maybe you can do this in your yard.